We spend a lot of time at Leostream talking about high performance workloads and the different display protocols and technologies that support them. But there are a lot of really good use cases out there for straight RDP, Microsoft Desktop Connection Protocol. But what we've noticed over the course of the last couple of years as people have been working more remotely is the last thing you want to do actually is route that RDP connection over a VPN in order to handle your remote workforce. So a lot of people now are looking for VPN-less solutions. So let's talk about why you might want to do that and how Leostream can help. So if you're talking about users working in remotely and connecting through RDP, security is key. You want to make sure that only the authorized users have access and that the connection itself is secure. The last thing you want to do is open up port 3389 to the world, because I guarantee you instantly you will see people hammering on that port trying to get logged into your machine. But you don't want to necessarily invest in VPNs to solve that problem. And this is a few reasons why. First of all, VPNs, they are inherently complex to install, set up, teach your users how to use them. So if you remove the VPN from the picture, it lowers the complexity of your overall solution, which then makes it easier for you to manage, makes it easier for end users to adopt, and end user adoption leads to end user happiness, which is key to any solution. Kind of wrapping in end user experience and happiness is the performance aspect. If you put a VPN in the middle of your RDP connection and you start scaling out the number of users you need to put on that VPN, that's going to drag down the performance of their actual connection. And that means in order to scale out more users, you actually need to scale out the VPN devices themselves. And that is inefficient, particularly in a time when it might become hard to come by the hardware that the VPNs run on. And then also it's just a matter of the time and money to scale out these environments as well. So if you want secure remote desktop connections for remote access, ditch the VPN and insert Leostream. And it not only does Leostream help you solve those three problems we talked about on the last slide, but it brings some key functionality into the picture as well. One is advanced authentication. You hear people talk about zero trust workflows, and that's all about ensuring that it's just the user that they say they are logging in and they only have access to what they need. So a key to that is being able to enforce MFA policies and other authentication policies that you may have in place, such as password lengths, and wrap those into your remote access platform. Leostream does have a number of different MFA systems that you can integrate with, and you'll see that in the demo we'll do here in a minute. So after you've authenticated the user, next you want to authorize the correct access, and Leostream has a very comprehensive set of policy controls that allows you to control who has access to what, from where, and for how long. So you always know that you're giving the least privilege access to the different resources that are in your environment. And then finally, again, it's all about securing the connection. You really want to keep port 3389 off of the internet, and using the Leostream Gateway, using that component of the Leostream platform. You have two different ways of doing that for RDP. You can either use the built-in HTML5 RDP viewer that's included in the Leostream Gateway, or you can use the gateway to forward RDP traffic along random ports. And you can even filter that by client IP. So that way you ensure that only the user sitting at their house from their client can connect through that port, ultimately to get to their desktop hosted inside your data center or in a private network in the cloud, wherever you may have it. So to show all of these aspects in practice, let me share my screen. Okay, so here you see the login for the administrative web interface for the Leostream connection broker. So you see here, like if I just point out the URL, this is my initials -broker. So this is actually the interface for the connection broker itself. I'm logging in /admin, so I'm going to log in as the main broker administrator, and I'll show you why I point out that /admin here in a little bit. So as I log in, let's step through some of the setup that is key for creating these secure RDP connections. Let's go straight into setup and look at authentication servers. So here in my environment, I have two different types of authentication servers defined. The first thing I did is I hooked my Leostream environment up to Okta. So we as a corporation, maybe you do too, use Okta as our corporate standard for authentication. So what I do here is I leverage Okta as the SAML-based identity provider that sits on top of Leostream for my remote users. Anyone who's going to come in from home and wants to log into their desktop in the data center has to go through an Okta verification first. Okta then returns a SAML assertion and allows the user to log into Leostream that way. Now, right now, we seem to be in a hybrid kind of work environment. Some users are working from home, some are actually in the office. If the users actually come into the office, they've already validated who they are by tapping their key card on the door. So they've really already kind of passed one level of authentication. So in that case, I'm going to let that user just log in using their corporate credentials through Active Directory. So to do that, I enable this option here, enable user logins without SAML. By default, if I go to my Leostream address, this is the IP address of my broker, or I can go to the host name here. By default, that would redirect the user to SAML and all users had to log in through the SAML IDP. By checking that, I can allow remote users to come in through SAML, or require, I should say, remote users to come in through SAML, while allowing local users to actually hit this /login URL and go straight through an Active Directory authentication. To do that, though, means I need to actually create an Active Directory authentication server here inside of my connection broker. So that's one of the reasons I have AD set up here. And similar to other authentication servers, I come in and provide information about that Active Directory server so the broker can connect to it, query users, authenticate them, what have you. But this AD server has AD authentication server here has a second purpose within the context of Leostream for my particular example. And that's that I created actually an Active Directory center from it. Now, a center in Leostream is any third-party system that we inventory the desktops that you want to manage. That could be a cloud, it could be a virtualization environment. In my particular example, I said, this is going to be our Active Directory computer records. They're the physical devices that when users go home, they need to be able to come back and connect to. So that's why I created an Active Directory, but this could be whatever your center of choice is. Now, obviously, if I connect to Active Directory or to our entire vCenter, for example, that's going to bring in a lot of different virtual machines, and maybe not all of them are. Maybe some are servers. You're not managing them as part of your VDI environment or hosted desktop environment. So there's this handy setting in here to initialize discovered desktops as unavailable. So I actually selected that when I created my Active Directory center. So all of our corporate machines and everything else that I'm not utilizing in this demo, the broker now knows, hey, you know what? These aren't machines you're managing. Don't ever offer them out to users. So after creating my SAML authentication server, hooking up to Active Directory and creating the center, next time we'll want to look over here at the MFA providers. If for users who are coming in remotely, Okta is going to handle the different types of authentication the user has to go through. You'll see that it'll end up being username, password, and a push or token. If a user comes and logs into Leostream and Leostream is using Active Directory as username password, you can still have a second factor. You just need to do it through one of the providers that's entered here on the MFA providers page. In this case, I've created two, all leveraging Leostream's support for the Radius protocol. So I've connected back up to Okta via a Radius agent, an Okta Radius agent, and I've also connected to Duo through a Duo proxy agent that they provide as well. Why did I do that? Well, what you're going to see is I actually have the ability for remote users to log in through Active Directory if they're using the Leostream Connect client. So they're going to go through the web browser, they're going to hit Okta and use SAML for multi-factor authentication. If they use Leostream Connect, they're remote. I still want them to use multi-factor authentication, but the broker is going to do both factors. It's going to authenticate against AD and then hit one of these Radius servers. In this case, you'll see I end up using Duo here. All right, working down the list, we've already talked about our AD center. Then next, I want to look at the gateway here. Obviously, if we're talking about remote access and you don't want to have a VPN, you need to have something to tunnel the user's connection in. And in the case of a Leostream environment, that's the Leostream Gateway, which I've created one here. So here I have a public address for the gateway itself. that is what my remote users would hit. It should be publicly accessible out on the internet. This is my private environment. You can't try to go to it. You won't be able to. But for your own environment, you want that to be an address that users can hit from their home address. And then the private address that the broker itself can talk to. Now, one of the actually two key things I want to point out here. One is the method for routing display protocol traffic. There's a few different ways that Leostream can do this. And for RDP, to make it be as secure as possible through the gateway, the best thing to do would be, say, from a random port on the gateway to the protocol-specific port on the desktop, filtered by the client source IP. So that what that means is that when a user connects, whatever my IP address is, the gateway is going to create a rich rule that allows that IP address through some random port to 3389 on the desktop. And then the gateway will block anyone else who's trying to connect through that particular or to that particular machine through the gateway. So that's the option to set there. You can have the gateway forward 3389 filtered by client source IP. That's a valid option. Sometimes it works out better behind a load balancer, or just depending on what ports you want to open up in the firewall that you put in front of the gateway. But I like to use the random port. The other thing I want to point out here, you see on the right-hand side, it gives you some information about the gateway. And one of the lines here is that connection broker forwarding is on. So what that means is that the gateway can be used not just for connecting users to their desktop, but also for forwarding the login traffic to the connection broker itself. The connection broker always performs all the logic. The gateway is really just a tunnel routing traffic appropriately. So by turning on connection broker forwarding, when the user hits this URL or this page, it's going to forward on to my broker address here. Well, that's all great. I definitely want that to happen because I want users to be able to log in. But the trick is I don't want that login page to suddenly appear on the internet because I want remote users to come in through Okta. I don't want a web page displaying the login. So to ensure that happens, I come here to the system settings page, scroll down to security settings, and there's an option to block web browser login dialog when getting to the broker from the gateway. So now what will happen in this case, if I try to go to that login page, gateway/login that I enabled, it's going to give me a 404 not found. This will also be true for the admin page, so it ensures that no one can get into the administrator interface from the internet itself. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the setup here. Now let's look at the configuration for actually assigning desktops out to users and getting them connected securely through RDP. The first thing I did was I created a pool. So as I mentioned, I have my AD center, so there's all these desktops in our Active Directory. I don't want to necessarily assign them out to users, so they're unavailable by default, but I do want my VMs. I created a pool of all my VMs, just happens to be by my initials here. And then one key thing I did is I said, let's track historical pool assignments and connections, set a sample rate for the data. You definitely want to do this on any pools that you want to display the information for on the new dashboard that's coming up in Leostream. So if you're a Leostream customer now, start tracking your history as soon as you can. That way, when you upgrade to Leostream 9.1, you will see the graphs appear. So I created my pool. You'll see there's 5 machines into it. I can actually just click over here and that'll take me to the desktops page filtered by the employee VM pool so I can see them. And what I did was I actually marked these all as available. Now I didn't have to do that one by one. That would be kind of annoying. What I did to do that was I clicked this checkbox and hit edit. And then you can do a bulk change on the availability status. You could take this in the other direction too. So if you needed to flip a number of machines into maintenance to do some upgrades, you can just come in here and mark them as unavailable. But let's leave them as available so they get offered out to users. All right, so after we have our pool, we make sure our desktops are all available. Let me show you, I have 2 protocol plans here, one for on-prem users and one for users connecting in remotely. The on-prem actually is just the default, which leverages RDP and does not send it through a gateway, both for web and for Leostream Connect logins. For remote users, If they come through Leostream Connect, so not through the web browser, I'm going to leverage RDP and send it through the gateway. I'll show you that, how that looks. If they come through a web browser, then it's actually going to use the HTML5 viewer. So it's going to keep the connection in the browser. And since we're talking about security here, maybe I want to make sure I turn off file transfer and local printing. And I already have security set all the way at network level authentication. So that's good. Skipping down to release plans, the thing I want to point out on release plans, since we're going to have users coming in through Saml, the broker itself never holds the user's password, which is great, again, for zero trust. You don't want to be passing the user's password around. So they log into Okta. Okta sends whatever information you want or you specify to the connection broker. So in this case, in my example, the connection broker has the email address, the user's name, the user's login name, but never has a password. So it's possible that the user could connect to their RDP machine, but not actually log into the remote operating system, because there they have to type in their password to actually get in. So if that happens, I want to make sure I trap those cases. So what I did down here, and when the desktop is first assigned section, is I set the release if user does not log in to 5 minutes. So if the user clicks the connect button and then walks away to get coffee, after 5 minutes, the connection is going to get released. The gateway is going to close the ports. That just helps you keep things from lingering open. To bring all these together, I created two policies, one for on-prem and one for remote. Now, there's different ways that you can do the tasks that I'm about to show you. You could, and you'll see I do create a location. You could create locations and do protocol overrides. So everyone gets the same policy, and then the protocol plan based on the location changes them from directing connectly to going through a gateway. But what I actually did was I created two policies, and they're nearly identical except for the protocol plan. So if I look for one, just for the on-prem here, if I look at the pool assignments, you see I'm going to connect one machine to the, or I'm going to offer the user one machine from the employee VMs. And because it's the on-prem, they just get the default protocol. Now, in my particular example, I'm saying I'm connecting people to their actual machines, which are domain joined machines in AD. So it's a matter of how do I get the person to the correct machine? We have many people in Leostream who manage pools of machines, so the broker can just randomly hand out a machine from the pool. But if you have dedicated machines, here's one way that you can tell the broker which machine is the user's dedicated machine without hard assigning it to the user. So here, essentially, we have some machines where the name of the machine itself contains the user's login name. And then for those machines that aren't set up like that, they have more esoteric names. I can use an AD managed by field. So I actually went into Active Directory and set the managed by field so I can say those machines are managed by a particular user. So now, even though I have a pool of all my employee machines, when a particular user logs in, it's going to look for a machine that matches one of these rules because I'm should be oring them. Let's change that to or so it works. So it's going to match one of these rules here. Save that. So now if we look at the remote desktop employees, if I look at the pool assignment here, you'll notice now that it's using the gateway connection protocol plan, even though it's the same pool. And this one, I believe I had already remembered to set it correctly to OR. So those are my two policies. And the reason I did two policies instead of just a protocol plan override is because I'm going to be working with these two different authentication servers, both my Okta Saml server and my Leostream AD server. Before I get to that, the one final thing I want to show you is locations. What I did here was I created a location, which is everyone who's coming in through my Leostream gateway. So this gives you a way of grouping together your remote users and the clients that they're using. And I'll show you how I'm using that in the assignments page here. So as I mentioned, I have two different authentication servers and associated assignments tables. This is for Okta. So the way I have Okta set up is it sends a SAML assertion back that contains a groups attribute. And then I'm just looking for users who fall into certain groups. So that's my demo group. And then I give a role and a policy. For anybody who's not me coming through this particular Okta server, they're just going to fall to the default policy, which says block the login entirely. So they won't be able to log in at all. So Okta are remote employees. If I look at my Leostream here, the way I set this up is I'm like, okay, well, first, anyone who's coming in through the gateway has to first pass through MFA using Duo. And then if they pass all that, well, then they can get a remote employee policy so they connect through the gateway. If you fall through that, somebody who's a student in the student group, they don't require MFA because now I know that they didn't get trapped by this first location, so they're actually on-prem and they can go ahead and connect on-prem to their machines. So that was a lot. Let's show it from the end user's perspective and what you see. And let's actually start with a Leostream Connect login here. So if I look, Leostream Connect right now, if you can see that little font, it's actually pointing at the gateway. So this is simulating a remote user logging in. So if I go ahead and log in, it's going to ask me for MFA. This is actually sending a little Duo push notice to my phone, which you can't see, but I'm going to hit approve. And then it's going to connect me into my machine. It's about to take over my screen. Here on the logs, you can see what's happening. So you have full visibility into what's going on. Let me just let that connect in the background there. You have full visibility into what's going on in your system. So you can see me logging in, the offer that I was made when I requested the connection got assigned, and then you see the forwarding rule being added again to the machine, but on a random port and only for my particular client IP. Let me log out of this real quick. Sign out. Get rid of that. So now what about if I came in remotely from a web browser? To do that, let's go over here to our little incognito mode. And so now I'm going to point at gateway. Notice no /login, that was blocked. I go straight to the gateway address, which is forwarding to the broker, which redirects me over to Okta. So now I can come in here and log into Okta. Okta is set up to ask me to send a push. Now I have so many MFA apps on my phone, it's not even funny. So now I'm getting the Okta push. Yes, I signed in near Cambridge. And then this will show me my offers in Leostream. And now I can connect. And now, because again, Leostream doesn't have my password, I came in through Okta. This is going to connect to Leostream Gateway's HTML5 viewer, but it ultimately is going to need to prompt me for my password for the RDP session so that I can log in. Oh, cut and paste doesn't work there. So there's my gateway connection there, starting in. Again, if we look at our logs, you can see, if I go back down a little further, you can see that I was unassigned from the previous machine, which removed the forwarding rule here. So now that I cleaned that up, so no one can try and even look for that anymore. And now I launched a connection through the browser. This is all just along 443, so there's no firewall manipulation that's going on in that case there. So the last thing to show would just be, there it is. Let's change this now. So that, let's say I've gotten back to my desk now, or somebody else has, and they're going directly to the broker. In this case, the user is actually logging in internally. There's no MFA actually being prompted for because the broker knows, hey, this user went straight to the broker, and so they just get connected to their desktop. We'll just let that RDP connection happen over there. And again, you see all of that happening inside the logs here. So with that, there are a lot of other options, a lot more that you can try and a lot of other workflows that you can model through Leostream. If you want to give it a try, you can always contact us. We offer free trials. We can do demos for you to show you more. Just contact us at sales@leostream.com. Thanks.